All right, guys, it is, gosh, a new time and date this week, but we appreciate you making some time for us tonight. It's another weekly episode of Conversations with Commodores. I've got number 77 coming out of Sacktown.
That's
Nifae
right.
Lealao is with us. Nifae, anchor down, and thanks for joining us tonight,
baby. Man, all the way from the West Coast in Sacktown. It's good to see, well, not physically see everybody, but good to see you, B, and just be able to have this conversation and, touch back with a lot of our teammates and, older teammates like yourself that I haven't met yet, but I can't wait to meet. So it's nice to kind of be a part of this big family.
Well, brother, I appreciate you making some time, reaching back out to me when I was trying to finally track you down. But that's why we're doing these conversations. It's to reconnect Commodores who were teammates and Commodores who were from other years. And we're just telling our stories. And you've got a real good one tonight. I'm so proud of what you do professionally. We're going to get to that in a little bit.
Yeah.
We got to go back to the origin story. Take us to Sacktown as a little guy. If you were a little guy, you were always a big guy as far as I've seen during your years at Vanderbilt. I know you're down weight now, but talk about growing up in Sacramento, and you've got an awesome big family that's very close. So share a little bit about them too.
Yeah. Well, first off, big brother Bernard, I'm so thankful for you to have me on the show. Combos with Commodores, I love to play on words, and I thought this was going to be a good opportunity to touch base with everybody in the past and the present, but more so directly in the future. So I'm excited. As far as Sacramento, when people think of California, or a lot of people romanticize California a lot more often than not. And going to school in the South, I've kind of learned that. And I thought it was a joke growing up in California. So since I've really understood that, Sacramento, even though it's the capital of California, I thought it was a great place to grow up. It's my primary, location of growth. I actually was born in Bong Bong, American Samoa, and grew up in St. Louis for a little bit and Florissant for about a few years. My parents actually were there for 10 plus years before that. And then from the Bay back to Sac. So as far as when I went to school, a lot of that was in Sacramento. And, sports initially wasn't a part of my life. It's not where I wanted to do. I kind of, for those who follow me or have kind of understanding of how my life goes, I was pretty set on winning American Idol and getting out of here and having Simon Cowell give me a golden ticket and Randy and Paula just cheering me on. So that really was my goal all the way up until, I was about 8, turning into 9. I was around 3rd grade. I'm 5'5", 175, and they're in a lot of no weight limit leagues. So I would have been playing with high schoolers at 9 or about to be 9, but around my 8-year-old age because of my weight. So there was a new no weight limit league starting in the SYFs. So I played for a local high school junior team, the Real Into Junior Knights. And, ever since then, defense kind of stood out for me as far as what came naturally to me. And so it's funny how that kind of is where it started all the way until, I picked up basketball after that, went to Sutter Middle School down in Midtown and Sac. And, it's pretty popular. It's a big public school. A lot of the school before that was pretty small in the area that I played Pop Warner in. So as I continued to grow, I wasn't as good as hoop yet. And so I was still sticking with football. Hoop was just something I wanted to try, figure out with my friends. And, as I continued to start to build, middle school is when I think my athleticism and the coordination, everything started to just become a little bit more balanced and fluid. And I think it started to take the reign from there. And school wise, I've always been, pretty good in school, 4.0 or above. A lot of the times, and majority of my life, a lot of my mentors and teachers would joke that I never cracked a book. So I wouldn't say that was a talent of mine. I just would gain some of that common understanding from, general knowledge and just looking to apply it a little quicker. So kind of similarly to the game is just, working on having some in-game adjustments a little more often than not. So I'm an only child. My parents are they have about 6 siblings each. And so it was a lot of personal time for me, but a lot of loneliness that I filled the vacancies with, music, family time, and obviously sports.
Well, I was just getting ready to say, even though you may have been an only child, you had to have had tons of cousins and aunts.
Yeah, I would say like it's just crazy because every time you go somewhere, a lot of like, your friends or your peers, like they laugh because they're like, dang, you got family everywhere. Like, is he your cousin too? Is that your uncle too? Is it your auntie too? Like, that actually happens more than normally. So I just kind of like, as I've gotten older, I've learned how to deal with it better. But it is funny, but it's true. Like, I really do have this many aunts and uncles. Like,
yeah, but that's growing up. That's the cocoon of Sacramento with all the family there.
yeah.
You've got your football family. You've got your blood family. How did you get out of that part of the state and get all the way to Nashville and not stay closer to home where you could have as many family members as you want,
Right.
hit the highway as opposed to flying, 1,800 miles or whatever it is from Sacramento.
Yeah.
How did you go through that process of getting out of California?
Did you before I get into it, were you able to read about they posted this in the Tennessean about my actual recruiting trip leading to these? I think it was like a top 60 lineman feature, and they were just talking about what our processes were and where we were now.
I was going to let you tell.
Oh, okay.
That.
Yeah. So we just kicking back and really having this. By this time, it's senior year. I just got back. I was committed to another school before this.
Tell them where. Tell them where.
Oh, so I was committed to Stanford before this. That's always been my dream school. As when I got to middle school and was getting a little bit more serious about college,
How far from Sacramento to campus at Stanford?
Yeah, just about 2 hours, and really about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And so it's a beautiful place. Like, love the coaching staff. Coach Shaw was great, but my relationship actually was developing a lot more with him, Coach Hart, the position coach, and then Coach Mason. So Coach Mason being the DC over there. So they had just came back from winning the Rose Bowl. I think both times, but they for sure were like the Pac-12 champs, in that part 2 years of high school right before I got to senior year, since they're on their way to another bowl my senior year. But so that's pretty much how it started. And I committed to Stanford at the end of the summer of junior year. So at the beginning of senior year, hopped on, I think the Lemon Report or on ESPN, one of those, made the commitment. And about a week later, I, was announced the U.S. Army All-American. So I got my jersey ceremony. A lot of it was going on. We get to the Army game, and Coach Mason gets the job at Vandy. A lot of this, tapers down. I'm getting back from San Antonio. Everybody was still cool with me taking my trips. I only took 3. So I took one to Berkeley, then to Cal, and then to Stanford. And then my last one was unexpected. So it wasn't really something I planned to do, but I'm almost there. We get there, come back. It's just been a lot up in the air about where I was going to go, kind of like how I'm going to fit into the next year system. And at that time, my position coach ended up being, as far as like connection at Stanford, was Coach Tata. Like, that's how I was like really deeply connected. Even though Coach Hart was the D-line coach, Coach Tata was like helping out a lot in that area too. So he was going to be the D-line coach. So I was talking to him. He talked to my dad a lot, at both my parents, him and Coach Mason. Him and Coach Mason came to come watch one of my basketball games around like this week in January. Pretty midweek of January, they're coming to watch. And I ended up having an in-home visit here with Coach Tata. And that was for Vandy. They asked about coming out, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to make it, because as everybody knows, it's about 2,000 plus miles away from where I live and where I've known. So it wasn't like a initial great reaction for me to leave, but the time started winding down, decisions had to be made. And so this is kind of like, with the conversation as it leaves, like this Wednesday night. The next day, it's Thursday. We're like, this is like the week before signing day. All this is happening. So, and the next day after this in-home visit, or actually 2 days. 2 days after that, I get home from hoop practice. We don't have a game. I think that game's the next day, and it's a league game. It ain't that big, but my dad tells me that we have some family to go see. They're just like, it's a family emergency, and so that's kind of like what the story was to get me up. I'm like, okay, like, should I be ready? They were like, oh, we're about to be in the airport the next morning. Whoa. So it don't really sound too serious to me, but that's kind of like, that's what happened. And then I wake it up, it's about 4 o'clock, getting over there. And I'm like, okay, I got my stuff ready, but it's just me and him going. So that was my first red flag. So I was kind of like,
wait, up to this point, you think it's a family emergency?
Yeah.
This is your dad pulling this off.
Yeah. So
okay.
We get there, it's family emergency, getting to the airport. My mom's dropping me off. I'm saying goodbye, whatever. Getting inside to the airport, I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, dang, like, was I just that oblivious at 18 that I just was not paying attention to, like, okay, where are these bags going? I wasn't at the counter listening. Like, I was just smart, like, just out of the zone, because I'm like, man, I hope this is whatever. Like, I'm just trying to think of, like, worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Getting past it, we're up there at the gate. The gate says, I think we were going through Vegas to Nashville. So once it says Las Vegas/Nashville, I was kind of like, what's in Nashville? Whatever. We're getting on here, and then we're going to Vegas. I pull up Twitter, whatever. Here I see my big old face saying Vandy set to host next huge big visitor or whatnot.
And you didn't know this.
And I did not know we were going over there. This was all undue to me. Like, it wasn't my initial choice to do.
And what was your dad's come out and admit it?
So we're on the trip. I look at it while I'm on the plane, and I told him that I wouldn't really speak to him unless I was hungry or I needed something, because I was just that mad. Like, and I didn't know really what else to say at 18. That wasn't even good to say, but trying to just channel my frustrations differently. That's how it was. Got there, got all the way to Nashville. I remember seeing Coach Tata's face when I got to the baggage claim, and we're looking, and I was like, he just knew. I was so irritated. Like, what am I doing? Like, I was reluctant, to say the least, about this trip.
Well, let me pause you for just a second, because this is wild. Step back from the trip. What went on behind the scenes that you know of now with your dad and the coaches to get you to go on that recruiting visit?
I think that, then again, like, me being an only child, my mom focused a lot on my academics, and my dad focused a lot more on my athletics. More so because his background in athletics is pretty extensive. Multi-sport athlete in high school, played semi-pro, and, just really understood where I was at the moment. And so him also being my dad / manager / agent, everything you could think of, being my number one supporter and fan. As my athletic career is continuing to elevate, so does the politics and everything else that comes with it. And how, really, what can I bring to anybody's table? And really, how am I going to be a good fit in anybody's, play scheme at the school, just the community? How is it going to build? And, we're pretty big on our culture as well. So I think that a lot of that was, included in their decision, just trying to, really push me to make the next step, because they saw a good opportunity for me and something I didn't see. And I think that's why they're the parent and I'm the kid. I was the kid.
Sure.
And still the kid.
But I would assume that Berkeley and Stanford had Polynesian culture on their campus, or at least nearby the campus, to be accessible for students of that descent. Nashville, Tennessee in 2015, 14, that time period, I don't see there being much Polynesian culture in Nashville as a whole, much less on that campus. So you're going to have to explain to me how the visit you didn't even know you were going on ended up being a good enough visit for you to then commit and then sign, because you got to connect some dots right here, bud, because this is blowing my mind right now.
Yeah. Well, I think even before all that, like, as I'm continuing to go on this journey, I'm not knowing that in a lot of the spaces that, you know, I've competed in, whether that's hoop, football, at nationals for AU, whatever, like, I've taken all like those to like the highest extent for that when I played PHPS, you know, basketball. And then, you know, our high school team was nice. We played with some, you know, first rounders in my high school team, and a lot of like people that are in my circle that I grew up with, that the caliber of being great is at a different level. And even though it's in Sacramento, it's just kind of everybody got their own wave of things, you know, like DJ Wilson and Marcellus Howard. We're talking social media icons and some first rounders. And then, you know, some other, you know, Mauricio Dubon, Tyler Schimpf, a lot of guys playing the MLB. Like, these are the kind of kids that are in my grade or below or right above us, that's kind of where we were at. And so when it comes to me specifically, like here, like over there at that time, like there isn't really a lot of polys here either, as far as like where I was at in my high school. Like, it was just me. So having the weight of, you know, my culture on my shoulders sometimes, like, I didn't really know I was representing it as much as, like, you know, I understood it after I'm hearing these interviews. I'm hearing how people are asking about the culture, and no different at Vandy. So that was another one of the things I was already used to doing, and kind of stepping out and doing things on my own, like being the only hooper that was playing football, but then now, you know, eventually turned into an All-American, but still was able to be a good hooper and have an opportunity to play both, and, you know, even a couple other sports. Like, that's doing all that while having to represent the polyculture, like, that was going to happen anywhere I went. And so it was great understanding to me that even at Stanford, it was good to have like Coach Tata around, Coach Pritchard, and just a lot of other polys at the time. Like, I think Pete was there at the time. At Berkeley, it was still like Freddie Tongaloa, you know, a lot of other guys that, like, you know, I've known either if they were in SAC or just locally around that, you know, we've seen each other. So I had to get used to that, whether I liked it or not, no matter where I went. But yeah, you're right. As far as me going there initially, that was establishing that poly pipeline, which it only took about 2 years. And then, you know, we're the first school with a lot of polys, period. And then, you know, Bama comes next with Tua, and then Jordan over there at Ole Miss after that. And then, you know, we got Braden and all them at LSU. So it's starting to really, like, you know, become a thing. And I was being a pioneer for that wasn't part of my plan. It just so happened to also be in my, you know, things to do. So I was kind of like having to speak to that. You know, I'm much more appreciative to know that eventually it's going to be a lot more than just me over here. But I'm glad to be one of the first people to let them know it's okay, because a lot of our family and people from the islands, the reason that we live more on the West Coast is because that's like one of the first states that a lot of us migrate to. And that's how a lot of my family at least started, you know, through the church.
Well, you know, when it happens organically or behind the scenes, when your father's pulling the strings and doesn't tell you, it's kind of cool though, the way it developed. And I'm going to fast forward for 2 seconds. You became the first student athlete of poly descent to graduate from Vanderbilt in 2018. And I think that's just phenomenal. And kudos to you for sticking with it and not transferring and not giving up or not getting too frustrated. And before we get to this, I'm going to leave you with a question, but I got to reintroduce the fact that we've got Neefeezee in the house. 7. We've got Nifae from Sacktown with us tonight. We got OJ Fleming. We got Aristotle Onassis Kirkland. We got Harold Lurcius. We got Jim Cunningham. and guys, there's too many who've rolled through. There's about 15 who've rolled through. Nifae, I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to introduce them, but I didn't want to interrupt.
All good.
Telling your story, because I'm totally fascinated with your journey. But I now want to go back to this recruiting trip, and I want you to take us, whether it was the recruiting trip or when you committed or whatever, whenever it was, that kind of flipped a switch in your brain that said, this is going to be my home for the next 4 or 5 years, and I'm going to do my thing in Nashville for the black and gold. Do you remember having a moment, a conversation, the light bulb has clicked on for you about that issue?
Yeah. So actually when I got there, the timing actually was all the same. So actually that same day I got there, I was a little late to the recruiting trip itself. It was like the last weekend of officials. I got there at the end, and my host actually was Wynn. Shout out to my guy Wynn, Jonathan Wynn of the A, good old Georgia, Stevenson High School, man. D Block forever. Ended up being a good teammate of mine, but at the same time, I met Jay Woods, and it's funny that you just met with one of my other teammates the other week, but Sean Dowling actually was in that group of people too. So they were all a class before me that had all redshirted prior to that season. So coming in, we all pretty much were on the same playing clock and kind of coming in this at the same time and playing it together. So this was going to be big. So went on my trip. The first night was cool, ate, came back, met some more of the recruits. I think at the time I stayed with this other Poly kid from LA. I forgot his name, but I know he went by.
Regular student or on the roster? Regular student or athlete?
Well, he actually was being recruited too. So we were on our official too. I just really forgot his name. I know it starts with a G because it was G something, but I'm not even sure if he ended up continuing to play after that, but he ended up not continuing on to, go to Vandy. So we were roommates, talked about it for a second because, like everywhere I've been, like that's the only place I had a poly roommate, one. So that was the only other person that I seen that was like me in that space to be like, okay, well, at least I know it ain't just me all the way out here that's kind of going through all this on my own, because it's different. Like how I look at my family is different. How I value that is different. And then how I put other things in my life after God in them is different. Like, you know what I mean? So that's just how I grew up. But I've noticed a lot of us who represent that Polynesian culture, like we all think the same in those areas. So that's kind of was one of the things that stood out to me immediately, other than the cookie cake, because I have a big sweet tooth. For me, it's kind of, I feel so bad that that's how I was initially, and I was so grateful towards my, during my journey, because the carpet was laid out. The red carpet was laid out for me, and like, a lot of it, with Sabrina and Tosin and Grooms, my guy Grooms, I still talk to Grooms till this day, man. Like this is the kind of things that, even Coach Mason, like him, some of my other teammates who still work with him, like just being able to have that open line of communication, like I got all that, but it took me a while to kind of let that set in once I got into what's the hotel down the street? The Hilton, the Embassy at the no, the one that's like right there by the Holiday Inn.
Marriott.
Oh, Marriott. Oh, the Marriott. See, all the times we're going there, I'm over here forgetting. As soon as we walked in that door, man, right by the stairs, like there was just so much going on. Introduced like, welcoming recruits, and especially me, because, also me not knowing that on top of all this, going there would make me the highest rated recruit ever in the history of the program. So that's not even was on my radar at all. It just kind of kept elevating and hitting other strides that I'm like, okay. So we get to Saturday, me and the recruits. The other recruit actually who really got me over here was Charles Wright. Charles Wright, me and him was on the same flight, him and his dad, me and my dad, and we didn't know each other initially, but I saw him on the flight going there. Dang, I feel like I'm going backward. I'm sorry, y'all, but it's all, I haven't talked about this in a while. Went over to the recruiting trip to there together, but I didn't know that that's what he was there for. There's not a lot of people that has that Gumby little half side fro that is just thinking it's cool coming out of high school. So, and it's a lot different than how you see Charles now, because he's like bulked up, training, fit, but he's just he's an all SEC linebacker, man. So that just so happened to end up being one of my like best friends and my dogs going in this game with Emmanuel Smith, Josh Smith, Bryce Lewis, him. There's so many people I can name: Josiah Saul, Sean McMorrow. Like a lot of those guys, they had so much influence in me coming here. But at the beginning, Charles was one of those first people to like really get me over the edge. And I really started feeling some things that like, dang, like I don't really know if I felt this at Stanford, but it was a good trip. I don't know if I felt this at Berkeley, but it was a good trip. But I'm gonna fill it out. And so that's kind of like the questions I was answering, since I was already there. It's not like I could really get up and go home. And once I had that first Friday, little off night, like I didn't really say much to everybody. I also met Oren Burks. And, those was my guys. Like a lot of them were so, going to visit their dorms, kind of seeing what campus was like as a freshman, and then going to see what other parts of campus was like. It was just good to see it kind of take a second to be grown up for a little bit till you go back and walk the stage. But I think that once we had that, we got back to the hotel, the recruits, it was like me, Stank, Trey Tarpley, Ronald Monroe, Trey Herndon, me, Charles Wright, even like Hawkins Mann, and like a few others. I hope I'm not forgetting anybody that was like there and I just forgot. But we pretty much was in the little ballroom thing, rapping, playing games, man. Coach Cotto even got me to sing. So just because everyone knew I sang, so I'm singing, Coach May stopped in. Like, we really are just like kicking it. And like, I think the question that was being answered was like, dang, like, this is going to be the first step of like really doing this with some of these people who are possibly going to be my future teammates. And I'm so far away from home. It's seeming like a good decision. Like, dang, like I feel good. Like I feel so differently than my last two trips. And I still had a couple that I could take, but signing day was coming up. There was I wanted to still hoop and finish. So I was kind of getting down to the wire, and I was like, dang, like, I don't really know what else could be wrong other than just being far. But then I don't know, maybe it might be a good, acclimating period for my maturation process. I was striving to find myself on, because, there's so much that's been going on. And before that, I actually found out I was well, actually, I'll get into that later. But leading to that decision, like right before the Army All-American ceremony, the day before that, I found out I was adopted. So I kind of had like a lot going on before I even got to that Army game, and before I even got to hoop season, and before I got to that trip. So signing day in general was so much.
That's
it was
crazy.
A lot.
That's crazy.
Like,
That's so much going on, but clearly that recruiting visit made a big impact on you. How did you deal with Stanford letting them know you're not coming there? Because that can be kind of touchy a little bit, saying that you've now flipped.
I think the best part is that I was just blessed to be with some coaches that were really understanding of the process and truly wanted what was great for me. And I think one of the people who understood that the most was Coach Shaw. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't, nothing against Coach Sonny Dykes. Like I just, he didn't really say anything bad about me or about the trip or anything, but they both encouraged me to take my trip. So I was good with that. As far as the depth chart and where I was for each of those spots, like I considered it. They were in my top 5 for a reason, because going into play, if not the first year, but right immediately the next spring, in that, being in that conversation, I was kind of in it, but I was like planning to be in it. Like I'm planning to go play and go make an impact and go do this. Like I didn't want to take no time off. So that's why they kind of fell into these 3. The third one being the surprise. But, after that night, and all things considered, that just happened to me in the fall. There was just a lot going on. And I think that week in the fall, with the high profile commitment, the public commitment to the adoption to the next day, cameras are back in my face to really present me with this Army All-American jersey, and you know, there's just ceremony for me, and I'm having a hard time kind of taking it in, but those are the kind of things that I had to keep kind of pushing past at that young age, you know, at 18.
Still 17, or were you 18 by this point?
I was 18 already at that point.
Well, regardless, 17, 18, or 19, that's some pretty heady stuff for a young guy coming out of still in high school. Did you commit when you were still on your visit to Nashville, or did it develop after you went back home?
Yeah, I actually committed the next morning. I just wanted to announce it. So I asked if we could just make it a silent commitment until I pull out the hats, because, you know, those kind of opportunities, as I'm going through it, sometimes I'm forgetting to enjoy it, and just, you know, forget that I'm a kid because I'm having to act like, you know, be as mature as a 25-year-old at 16, 17, because that's how we got to be. And so I don't think that a lot of people understand that unless you were an athlete or you were in that space. And the pressure's on, it's on. So I think that being used to that, that's what allowed me to be used to that, and therefore eventually helped me out on the field in every way. So
were you able to relax a little bit after you signed with the Commodores? Were you able to kind of chill a little bit and just enjoy
I
it
feel like,
time?
Yeah, that was probably like, and everybody will tell you afterwards, as far as, you know, especially in hoop, because you could notice, you know, everybody noticed it more. Like, I didn't really coming out of my slump. There was no shooting slump. Like, okay, the back to the basket works. Like, everything is really knocking down.
All the weight of your shoulders, all the weight is gone.
Right.
You know, you got the weight of the world on your shoulders before this decision, before you make this official, and now you've got your plans set. So let's go enjoy basketball season. Let's go enjoy the end of high school for a few months. I hope that was part of your experience.
Oh, and it was. As soon as I signed that paper in February, on February 3rd, man, I did feel a release. You know, we went on to win our third section in a row, state run, Final Four, playing against, you know, some more future NBA guys. And that's just kind of the mode we're in. I went to go do track and volleyball for the fourth year. And so I'm doing 4 sports with over 4.0. And, you know, I didn't want my goals to stop as soon as I signed to college and kind of just focus on that. I wanted to really see what it was like to finish and see my name in the program at the end, to be like, dang, I could do all that. I could do worship team. I could try to be an ASB. Like, you know, I'm just going to try to do whatever I can and the best of my ability, because, you know, it is me and I'm doing it for a lot more than myself. So I felt like whoever, if somebody looks like me comes to this point, I hope they like have an easier time to make this decision and know they can, because, or they're capable because they've seen somebody else just like them do it. So,
all right, you
eventually
in February, you make that big decision. You've now officially signed, you're a Commodore. Then in the summer, I assume after graduation at some point, you move east. You're no longer
actually, yeah. It was actually the night of graduation. I literally left this same night.
Wow.
I promise, like, everybody would think that it was a whole movie on this whole transition to college, but this last year to college, like, it should have been a Lifetime movie. Let me tell you that.
Well, you're no longer in your bubble in Sacktown at home. Lots of family, friends, 2,000 miles headed east. Talk about the adjustment period, not just from a homesickness or not just from football, but you've also got the academics, you've got the social life. You've got a lot you're dealing with as an 18, maybe 19 by now, coming out. Was that transition tough for you, or was it pretty smooth? How did that go the first semester or so?
Man, I will tell everybody right now, Vanderbilt is hard. For anybody thought that was easy, man. For everybody else who listen to this afterwards, I want them to know how hard this school really is. Not that it's harder than everybody else and theirs isn't hard, but the level of difficulty at this place it's top notch. And especially, you know, playing ball and just being a student athlete, there's a different set of requirements for us to be up there and just to live. And so I think that, you know, that conversation is getting, you know, a little better as far as like, you know, the student athletes versus students, which it never was a competition. I just think a lot of people get their feelings hurt when they kind of see that there's people doing more than them and they're still mad that, you know, they expect that they should get better privileges. So I think for me, I think I did well. I thought I did well with transitioning and being like the new person, because it's kind of, you know, in recruiting trips, it's always been me, you know, all-star games and anything that had to go represent my one school for a little bit and come back. Like, that's what I was used to. And this wasn't that. So this was like, dang, I really got picked to be here. And I was the first one in my family to go to college. So there's a lot going on. Like, nobody really knows how this is going to go. And they could only anticipate, you know, so much and just assume, you know, how it will go until we actually get out there. And I think that every flight I took out there, it didn't get easier for me until probably after the first year. I think the spring was a little easier than the fall, but that summer fall transition, because I left like after grad night, May 31st, you know, our reporting date was like June 2nd or June 3rd, whatever that Monday was. But I know that I needed to be there that, you know, by the weekend, before the weekend was over. So the only best option was to leave Saturday, technically, which was Friday night into Saturday after grad night. I hopped on the plane, went to Nashville, started moving in. It was just me and my dad, and he stayed for the week. And as I went through, you know, the intro stuff, getting our Commodore card, physicals, and then we started our freshman workouts, my dad was able to stay for that week until he went home. And, you know, I had a hard time with just acclimating being away from my parents, but then also kind of being away from home and everything I've known. But in the back of my head, I knew that as much as it hurt to really do all that now, it was eventually going to serve a better purpose for me in the future, that I was going to be able to finally want to get over that hump and be able to go anywhere without having to like feel that there's a need to be home, or, you know, not that I won't ever miss or love home or my family. I just felt like a hard part in this culture is breaking away and kind of growing up sometimes, because it's so convenient and easy to be around the family and have that support. But I felt like for me, I was ready to take the next step. And I think after the first year, it got better once I got a little bit of my, you know, groundings. And after that, couldn't get me to leave.
No, wait, Nifae, it was May 31st, 2014. Today is May 31st.
Oh my gosh. That's right. Oh yeah.
9 years ago today, bud, you're on the plane.
Man, like literally after, because okay, so I graduated 9 years ago today. And this all happened this like night. Like, actually, 1 second. Here's actually my little grad cap.
There we go. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
There we go.
And little cords and stuff over there. But, you know, all this hangs in like my childhood room. And I kind of have like a lot of other stuff that details the journey sports wise and then through school. Because, you know, so seeing all that. Yeah.
Well, let's stick in that first year. And I want to bring family into this, because I know that you're such a tight-knit family. Sports and achievements are just part of that infrastructure of what different family members have accomplished. Your father being an accomplished athlete, etc. Did they make any trips out to Nashville during your freshman year after your dad went home that first week?
I actually, they came to my first game when it was rained out, and we finished that game at like 2 a.m. that year, man. We played against Temple and lost. Golly, it was a long summer. But, leading up to that, like, they were able to come to the first game. My family, for sure, my parents and some of my extended family, like my dad's brother, their kids. So a lot of like my family that lived in St. Louis at the time, and I had some close family, extended family that lived in Tennessee,
Oh,
and Mount Juliet. So both of them actually were living in Mount Juliet. So kind of like
that's
this
it.
all worked out.
Yeah.
The Katinas as well. So kind of reconnecting with them. It's like we're
Yeah.
all family, like close and not close, but I know our grandparents are related, and my both my parents' grandparents are related to the Katinas. So seeing all five of them and all of their kids and families, like I'm really close to a lot of their kids, especially Sam's. So that was pretty much my vacant filler when I didn't see my family enough. And then
Yeah.
my dad, the last 2 years, was able to go to every home game. Like that was, he was just kind of holding off his
Oh, wow.
PTO up until like the season, and
Yeah.
he'll save it all year just to go. So
Wow.
my mom would make it sometimes, and I would get emotional every time she'd make it. Not that I don't let see my dad. I
Right.
ended
Right.
up not seeing her as much unless I went home,
Sure.
and so the middle 2 years were a little different because we went to the bowl game,
Yeah.
and our season was extended a little bit. I'm getting older and now taking more trips to stay out of state and kick
Yeah.
it with my homies over here and just travel. And so I'm
You're
getting
growing
used to just
up.
kind of, yeah, you know what I mean?
Maturing.
So I was
Well,
just kind of growing up with that.
yeah. Well, share a little bit about one, was there any polyculture on campus or in Nashville that you found, or did you have to bring it all to share, not just with your teammates, but classmates and anyone else? How did that
Yeah.
go? I'm sure people were curious.
No, I think there are a lot of people more curious. And I think that if I had to do something differently, I felt like how I was entering my junior year with Saya there and Sean there, like those were the first two polys that, I was close with and still close to this day that, got me to come out of my shell to
Yeah.
really do
Yeah.
this how it should have been done. I'm thinking about so many other things that I felt like maybe at the time, me being there and being someone was enough, but I wasn't nearly as enough that I should have been because those two helped me bring out more. And we even had I called her my daughter at the time, but Talon Tosin, who came from Hawaii and played on the girls soccer on the soccer team, like her, they're all coming in as freshmen together. So that was like their first dose of polyculture period after me, on campus, taking pictures and Googs, like while we're eating in Hendrix, and like people are doing these like little mini stories on us because everybody's seen that we have four or five student athletes who represent these little islands over here, but they are much more than that, and a lot speaks to their morals, their values, how they talk and walk, and their tattoos, and so I think that it didn't. There was nothing before I got there, but it didn't really activate until I became a junior, and I think before that I was just kind of more so the face and being able to answer to it. But I want to say the real work began when we started all that when they got there.
No, I think that's fantastic because the press and the people in different positions higher up, the administration, they could have ignored you guys. They could have just left all that alone. But I'm just
Yeah,
proud that they didn't. And I'm proud that you guys stepped up and shared about your culture and that folks were willing to listen and to learn. But
yeah,
let's put that on pause for just a second. I want to go on the
yeah,
field. I want to talk about playing time. I want to talk about depth chart. You were a proud athlete coming out of high school, highly decorated. And I know that the athlete mentality in you is, I want to play now. But that didn't necessarily unfold that way. You're in the best conference. You're playing one of the hardest positions in the toughest conference. Talk a little bit about fighting for playing time and depth chart and dealing with that psychology of being not just a proud athlete, but one who has confidence in his abilities. Talk a little bit about that and how you dealt with it.
yeah. Coming in there was only 3D linemen coming in. It was me, Sekou Clark, and Riley Tyndall. and both close friends of mine. Riley actually ended up being my roommate the first 2 years, so we were able to develop a good bond after that. And then they both took some time away from, football in general and just focused on school, the last couple of years of school. And then actually Sekou transferred after the second year. So us competing amongst each other was like, we were cool because me and Sekou were on our recruiting trip together. So coming in this, I think the competition, like we were competing, but there was only three of us. And we were all on the same page about not losing our spot. So whoever lost, you just got to take it. Now, if it was in the weight room, in sprints, if it was in reps and whatever. And so that mentality fortunately brought me to the ones and twos in the gold group at the time when we reached camp. And my mentality going through the summer was, you got to get in shape. It wasn't really the best the first 2 years as it was the last two as far as that, but that's just the maturity of the diet and just kind of like,
Well, getting used to humidity. Did you have humidity growing up in Sacramento? Probably not like Nashville.
No, definitely not like that. And I think the closest was when I was in St. Louis. So it was been a minute. So getting used to all that at the same time, walking out, dripping sweat, and I'm already a heavy sweater as it is. So there's so many things my body was getting used to. But playing wise, I found myself in the twos, behind Big Vince. So then it was like me, him, Caleb Azubuike, Adam Butler, Jay Woods, Tori Agee, and then me. I think Landon kind of crossed over sometimes, and Wynn was still a linebacker, but Wynn came later. So that's kind of how it started with us. Coach Miley, Frank Miley at this point was our position coach. Coach Tata had stepped back and he was just doing some player development stuff. And then, I think it was cool. Like, I pretty much played every game except for one. And I think at that time, in my freshman year, we were at Mizzou and I didn't play. That was the first and only game in my life that I've never played. So that, as I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking about the flow of the game. I'm thinking about why. I'm thinking about how I could get better and just kind of like where I thought I was versus where I was at that point. And I know for me, that made a change because the next year was a lot different coming in, at least to the spring up until like the rest of the season. So, first year wasn't so great for me.
Provided a lot of motivation. Probably provided a lot of motivation for you.
Yeah. Oh, definitely that. And I think just kind of seeing the pace of the game grow and being behind guys like, Vince and Caleb and Adam and Jay until I started to gradually see myself like, well, I always saw myself with them, but I just knew that I wasn't at where I needed to be. Like I could make it there. I could make some splash. I could make some plays as a young cat, but I'm not in control of it yet. And so it wasn't until sophomore year when I started starting and now getting under my belt, battling through some minor injuries before a major one junior year. So I thought it got better, but I want to say that, a lot of that was just the core group. It definitely, we became closer as a group. After Coach Miley took the job at Utah State, Coach Ayu came in my last year. So, the dynamic of the group, D-Block in general, that's why I get D-Block, because really it started with Coach Ayu, and I call my high school group that I coach now that too, and just some guys I train with. So just that camaraderie, that team feeling, that family-oriented culture that he established even more than what we had made it even better for us. And I think that was like where I got my best playing years, at least, because I felt like the reins were off. I know what I know now. I know what it's going to look like. I know how fast it's about to be. Like, I'm starting to really understand all this in the last 2 years.
The game slows down. The game slows down. Your heart rate slows down. It's not new to you. Like you said, you've now been around the game enough and experienced it. It's like riding a bike. It's like learning how to do a certain task. Things just come a little more natural to you. But I want to take you to I think it's your third year, your junior year of 16. That Kansas State game, we talked a little bit earlier. I was at that game. That was a wild game, but I know it had to be exhausting for you guys. I know that K-State talked a lot of smack leading up to that game. And you know where we're headed. You and I've talked about this. It's your blurb on social media. But I want to talk about the K-State game and what preceded the blurb about Bama later on. So take us to the Kansas State game.
Yeah, that actually was my senior year. You know, we're coming in 2-0. We beat MTSU at home. You know, and they had a good QB. I know it was the coach's son that was pretty much like one of the biggest things. But we were able to stop that, had a good showing there, came back home, played Alabama A&M, and then we were on our way to play our first ranked one of the season. I think they were like, 19th or something, or 16th, 17th, in K-State. And I was on the ticket this one. I'm a senior, preseason all SEC. So a lot of this is like coming out. The NCAA just ranked their top 10 D linemen of going into that year, and I was number 10. So just being able to put on in the Vandy uniform and realizing this ain't high school, and realizing that, okay, like this is getting real. Like this is like, we're talking about ages, we're talking about the draft and everything's coming up. So the mentality was different. Our team was coming back, and it was pretty much everybody but Zach. So just kind of like not missing a lot of key pieces in our defense, but then also like offensively being able to strike with a lot of, you know, good weapons that, you know, we had everything we needed. So reaching that Kansas State game, hit on it, bomb game. I mean, you were there, it was so hot, but I felt like we were running all day, but it was a low scoring game because the defense was going crazy. And I think that was like our first showing of putting it on paper. Like the year before, we were the number one red zone defense and offense in the country. And I know that has a lot to do with, you know, where I play in my group. So being able to kind of like bring that in the next season, it's like, okay, dang, like we actually proved to ourselves that we got it out the mud. That was our team little motto. TMU was, and I'll never really forget it because we really did change a lot. And although it may not have seemed a lot on paper, people who were there at the games understand football, just know that our junior year, 4 of those games, 6 of those games, actually 5 of those 6 of those games are decided by under 7 points. Mm-hmm. And so that changes everything for us. And a lot of those were ranked wins. So it's just kind of building on that. K-State was talking so much about Big 12 versus SEC. Don't really see how it was. And I think the emotions of winning that ranked game at home and winning it on a defensive possession, you know, I'm still living off that. But I was speaking to that when they asked about how I felt about the game and, you know, coming in here and talking about it because that's what the Big 12 was on at the time. At least that's where K-State fans were on at the time. And so I think I just fell into that and responded that in probably the most immature way. But that led to something big. And that's pretty much where that came from. Bama just so happened to be next. But
you know, that came from emotion. That came from you from here. That came from that game. And you were probably still on the field before leaving the Kansas State win. Now, social media is what it is. People just want to blurb. They want to use it for, you know, the sidewalk alums want to use it.
Yeah.
From an internal standpoint, was there ever an issue within the team, the fact that you said something about Bama?
You know, nah, like if there was, I don't think anybody really told me because people were getting asked about that like the whole week and everybody was very like you know, good about Bama and like, you know, like they meant it. Like everyone was just on the wave and hype or whatever. And that's not even what my intention was. But, you know, as one of the field captains on the team, like just being there and being in my position, like I'm the one who said it. I said what I said. Now I just got to go prepare and make sure that me and the squad are ready for this game. And so I felt like it started out great. And then as soon as we weren't able to really hit some key points and, you know, it started to show. So those kind of things that I felt like, could have been done differently. Yeah, but it all just really came from a Big 12 versus SEC conversation. And I was so heavily on the SEC side.
Well, I appreciate you setting the record straight, because so many people don't know that the origin leading up to the comment. They just know the comment.
Yeah.
But I've got so many things I want to ask you about that you've done since. I want you to share, what did it mean to you then and now, being the first student athlete to graduate poly descent from Vanderbilt in 2018? That had to have made you and your family just, I can't imagine the pride.
Man,
oh, and not to mention, didn't you say you were the first family member to go to college?
Yeah, that too. Like there was
even
so
bigger.
much. Like it's that, and also, you know, the first family member to pledge a frat, but the first, you know, poly member in my fraternity. I also pledged Kappa Theta, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated as well in spring of 18. So there was just like a lot going on with, you know, me also training, also you know, preparing for graduation and doing a lot of these first things that they're just man, I'm now just trying to figure out what I want my legacy to be. And like, you know, always ask myself that question, like, you know, what's my why? And I know that's a pretty common question a lot of athletes ask themselves, but you know, as I've been kind of in better tune with my faith, leaving high school because it was so easy for me to be around that, I was more in tune with, okay, can I answer that? Cool. And can I also answer like, okay, then if that's my why, then what I want my legacy to be? They sound kind of are similar, but there's like a little bit of a distinction with, like, you know, just the process, I think, is in my opinion. And so I think for me that doing all that and then finally walking the stage to do it, and even watching like the video, like it still doesn't feel real to me. But I look at this degree and then I remember that, you know, 9 years ago, no, actually, you know, 2010, so 13 years ago now, when the process for me started and the recruiting journey started, I was looking for a school that, you know, they're looking for make a 40-year decision, not four. And so Vandy always stood in that, you know, conversation for me. And that always was at the forefront of everything I was doing when I was walking the halls on campus. So I think that for me, on top of all that, being poly, being from Cali, being Nifae, being the first, being the everything, it wasn't going to mean nothing if I couldn't get to that stage and walk it. So I needed to go, like, as much as I've been through up until that point, man, I needed to see myself get over it and enjoy that and drink that little champagne and strawberries at graduation in the hot sun, strolling with my, frat and just the D9 in general and just my family and kicking it and just enjoying my time with my peoples that we worked all this time for these papers that at this one time, this one night, like this one day, I'm going to soak it all in. And I think I was able to do that.
And it sounds like you did. And, you know, to you, it may seem like it's been a difficult journey at times. At other times, it's been just you being in you. But from the outsider, someone who doesn't know you, someone we've just met tonight,
yeah,
you make it seem as if it was just Nifae being Nifae. You just being yourself. You're just carrying yourself the way that you know how, that your family has taught you, that you have taught yourself. You've matured through. It's now been 5 years since college graduation. And this leads me to the last section that I wanted to get with, is the legacy you're building every day right now for yourself. And I know that you're not necessarily looking for a pat on the back, but this is my time to ask you to really give a shout out to the work that you're doing, because it's making a difference in your hometown. Not many folks do that. Not many folks work with the type of youth who you're working with. So please indulge me. Tell me a little bit more about the program you're working with and what you guys are accomplishing.
Yeah. So I have recently just taken some time off, but we actually had a program at Capital Christian High School called the EASE program. And EASE is the acronym that stands for Educating All Students with Excellence. Now, it's actually under this bigger umbrella called ACE, which is Alliance for Compassion and Education Development. So this nonprofit, EASE is the nonprofit, and ACE is the umbrella for that. That's pretty much what funded us being able to go to this private school in Sacramento. And prior to 2010, none of us going in there who made a huge splash athletically and academically and just culture-wise, we didn't really understand what we were getting into with that. So on top of that, this program was started by one of my former coaches. He's actually part owner of the Kings, pretty big guy out here in Sacramento, and Phil Oates. Actually, after he watched The Blind Side, he came up with the idea to develop this program to find inner city kids, or allow inner city kids like myself and just underdeveloped youth or underserved youth, presenting them with the opportunity to experience this private school education, but by also being able to utilize all the gifts that God's bestowed upon me to glorify him in everything I said and did. And so I felt like, not knowing that at 14, 15, going into high school, and then, the program's, grown so much. I've actually went back to work for them in the last 2 years with my amazing boss, Shireen Groover. She's the executive director for this amazing program that she ended up hiring me, and I became, I was doing a lot of prevention work with her. So went through a couple of different titles, but in addition to her and my, high school head coach, who I coach with at Capital, he's also the dean of students, Saul Potsu, Oregon alum, NFL vet, the AFL vet for like 8 years. Having those two minds kind of be the supervisors for me, being able to, impart my wisdom on the youth has just been amazing. And pretty much this program started off as like a financial assistance, opportunity for us that eventually expanded to where, the program has had over like 200 people, 200 students, graduate through the program. The program GPA has been over that 3.0 for plenty of years, and it still continue to, be up there. And recently in the last 2 years, we've had kids go to San Jose State for football, Utah State for softball, Mountain West schools. We had one who was just named the Mountain West a freshman of the year as a freshman. So there's just a lot. Sac State, Princeton, Harvard alum, Texas alum, Vandy alum, Michigan alum, like UC Davis alum. We have so many kids who went through this program who have touched so many parts of the world that in this little school in Sacramento at Capital Christian High School, that all just kind of came up from just an idea of watching The Blind Side. So being able to work in the intervention or prevention style with them has been a blessing.
Nifae, do you see in some of those kids you as that age?
Absolutely. Like I see it on the field. I see it on the court. I see it on the court for volleyball. I see it on the field for track. I see it in the classroom. I see it, there's the polyculture is like so different now. There's like 3% of the school's population, even though it's 300 kids. Like the football team makes up 30%. The Polynesian culture makes up about 2 to 3%, but I'm just saying there's enough that it's more than just a handful when it was just me and my other two cousins. And then so just kind of that didn't come until my junior year either. So I kind of just this walk alone, it was a little different for me, but I walk in as like, a staff member now and a coach for all these different things. And because I coach girls as well too in basketball. So being able to see them in this different light and just them and being normal kids and remembering, having them remind themselves, like, you guys remember you're like 14 to 18 or 15 to 19. And even though you're D1, you got these offers or you're smart or you're going to college, you still got to remember to just take care of yourself and remember that you still could be a kid. It's okay, but, just take it in parts. And so just kind of being able to be there for them at those times.
No finer example than the life you're living right now to someone who's given back to the greater community, to the greater good. in your hometown, at your home school and community.
Yeah.
So, Nifae, I can only applaud you in the highest sense for what you're doing right now. And I just, right here, buddy, right here.
My guy.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you. I could keep you here for hours, but I'm going to be respectful of your time and the folks watching. We may have to have two, my friend, because you got so much more to share. We really do. I want to thank you for sending us a little bit, or sharing with us a little bit of your journey, your time on campus, and the good you're doing in the world. So thank you for your time and your story tonight.
Hey, I appreciate it. I just, everybody who's watching had a chance to hear part of my story. If we do part 2, I'll save the rest for y'all later. But just to know, that's just a little glimpse into like scratching the surface into a lot of that. Like there's still so much more that I'm sure everybody would like to know. But I really appreciate it to be able to say what I have been able to say, and just to be here and chat with you guys, especially you, B. So I'm excited and I'm thankful.
Well, for those of you watching us now, or will watch us on later on the upcoming days or weeks, this is why I do these conversations. The Vanderbilt community, the football alums, are a unique group of guys and women who were cheer or admin or coaches. Whatever part you played in the Vanderbilt football program makes up this unique 100+ year story. And we're just telling week by week the different stories from the different perspectives. And to get a guy like Nifae on here tonight was real special to me personally. And I know that others are going to enjoy this. But please keep coming back. Nifae, don't hang up in just a second. I want to talk to you after we get done. But I'm starting to put more and more information together about the Vegas trip. And Nifae, I hope you and I can break some bread in September.
Yes, sir.
We got a game time. We got a kickoff at 4 p.m. local. We're putting together, like I said, the legal seminar that I'm putting together for you lawyers who want to attend. Ansley Battles is getting a party together. We've got other organized things that are going to be going on that weekend. So just keep coming back into the football group and checking, because we're going to be posting things as we move along. Tickets are not ready yet. We're going to get a certain person in the ticket office who will be our contact person. We're going to sit as a group, hopefully. So that'll be a lot of fun for the alums to sit together. And there's just so much more. This picture behind me, guys, is 3 weeks old. It does not look like this now. Check back into the live construction cam that they've set up on the YouTube channel for Vanderbilt Athletics. It's completely flat on both ends of the field right now. It's cool. There's a lot going on.
Let's go.
A lot going on. Guys, I've got more folks coming on each week. Had Sean Dowling last week. Awesome story. Nifae Lealao, awesome story tonight. You guys, anchor down.
That's all right.